On September 20th, 1991, the commercial sword fishing vessel Andrea Gail departed Gloucester, Massachusetts, bound for the Grand Banks of Newfoundland. The voyage was not driven by adventure or ambition, but by economics. It was a late-season fishing trip intended to fill the hold with swordfish and make the voyage financially worthwhile. The vessel was a working longliner under the command of Captain Frank "Billy" Tyne. 6 men were aboard the Andrea Gail. Alongside Captain Tyne were Michael "Bugsy" Moran, Dale Murphy, who served as both cook and deckhand, Alfred Pierre, Robert "Bobby" Shatford, and David "Sully" Sullivan. All were professional fishermen, accustomed to long hours and difficult conditions at sea. The vessel sailed with fuel, bait, and ice, expecting to return within a month. The initial route followed the established paths of the North Atlantic sword fishing fleet. From Gloucester, the Andrea Gail headed east toward the Grand Banks, a region of shallow underwater plateaus where the cold Labrador Current meets the warm Gulf Stream. This convergence creates one of the most productive fishing grounds in the world, exploited by fishermen for centuries. Despite the historical abundance of the banks, fishing conditions were poor. With the cost of the voyage mounting, fuel, food, ice, and gear, Captain Tyne faced a familiar commercial pressure. To avoid returning with an unprofitable catch, he made the decision to push farther east, beyond the Grand Banks, toward the Flemish Cap. The Flemish Cap lies approximately 350 miles, 560 kilometers, east of Newfoundland. It is remote, exposed, and well beyond the reach of rapid rescue. Fishing there means accepting complete isolation. Throughout October, the crew worked the long lines, setting miles of hooks and hauling in swordfish. The risk appeared to pay off. By late October, the vessel's hold was reportedly filled with nearly 40,000 pounds of catch. On October 26, 1991, the Andrea Gail turned her bow west. The route home was a long slog across the open Atlantic, aiming for the coast of New England. The coordinates required a traverse of the waters between the Flemish Cap and the Canadian Maritimes. At that moment, Captain Tyne was in contact with other vessels in the fleet, especially Hannah Bowden under Captain Linda Greenlaw from the same company. Tyne reported a failure of the ice-making machine. While not life-threatening, it was a critical mechanical problem. Without fresh ice, the 40,000 pounds of fish in the hold would spoil unless they reached port quickly. This failure forced the vessel to maintain speed and urgency. They could not wait for the weather to improve and had to keep moving. The fishing vessel Andrea Gail was steaming westward. The atmosphere over the North Atlantic was undergoing a rare and violent convergence. This was not a typical storm, but an unusual hydrometeorological event later studied for decades. 3 separate weather systems were on a collision course. A powerful cold front pushing cold air off the Canadian Shield, the remnants of an extratropical low lingering near Nova Scotia, and Hurricane Grace moving northward from the vicinity of Bermuda. Usually, hurricanes wither when they hit cold northern waters. In this instance, the hurricane did not dissipate. Instead, it was absorbed by the extratropical cyclone. The energy of the tropical system fueled the cold core storm, creating a retrograding low-pressure system. Instead of moving east away from the coast, the storm backed up, moving west toward the coast, directly into the path of the Andrea Gail. The result was a storm of biblical proportions. The pressure gradient was so tight that it generated sustained winds of 70 knots, 80 miles per hour, and gusts well over 100 miles per hour. But the wind was secondary to the waves. The fetch, the distance wind blows over open water, was thousands of miles long. This generated seas that were not just high, but steep and breaking. The timeline of the Andrea Gail's disappearance is marked by radio checks. The ocean is a place of constant chatter. Silence is the first indicator of tragedy. On October 28th, approximately at 6 p.m., Captain Tyne made contact with Linda Greenlaw aboard the Hannah Bowden. At that moment, the Andrea Gail was positioned at 44 degrees 0 minutes north, 56 degrees 24 minutes west, about 162 miles to the east of Sable Island. Tyne's tone was composed. He did not transmit a distress signal. He did not cry out for assistance. He delivered a weather update. His words were, "She's coming on, boys, and she's coming on strong." When the Andrea Gail failed to report in and the magnitude of the storm became clear, a massive search and rescue operation was launched. The U.S. Coast Guard and Canadian Coast Guard deployed cutters and aircraft, scanning over 186,000 square nautical miles of churning ocean. There was a search conducted in hellish conditions. During the storm, the Coast Guard cutter Tamaroa was already fighting to save the crew of a sailboat, the Satori, and a downed Air National Guard helicopter. The Discovery. On November 5, 1991, the search teams found the only physical evidence of the Andrea Gail on the shores of Sable Island. Fuel drums with the boat's markings, a propane tank, wooden decking. The most chilling discovery was the Emergency Position Indicating Radio Beacon. The is designed to automatically float free and transmit a signal if a ship sinks. However, when found, the switch was in the off position. This suggests that the sinking was so violent and rapid that the device never had a chance to deploy properly, or the mechanism failed. After October 28th, the North Atlantic became a zone of continuous maritime emergencies. The storm damaged and sank several vessels, and extreme weather conditions led to the crash of a military rescue helicopter during a Coast Guard operation. Search and rescue services of the United States and Canada were overwhelmed by simultaneous distress calls. Wave heights measured by ocean buoys exceeded 60 feet, and according to some estimates, individual giant waves reached 80 to 100 feet. Sea surface temperatures were so low that hypothermia could occur within minutes. For several days after the last contact, hope remained. Fishing vessels often lose radio communication temporarily. However, as the storm moved inland and no further signals were received, a realization spread through Gloucester that something irreversible had occurred. No formal wreck investigation could be completed because the vessel was never located. However, the U.S. Coast Guard concluded that the Andrea Gail was lost due to extreme weather conditions associated with the perfect storm of 1991. There was no evidence of negligence, improper loading, or poor seamanship. Captain Tyne was regarded as competent and cautious by those who knew him. The decision to return home, despite worsening weather, was driven by economic pressure and mechanical failure, not recklessness. The case remains officially classified as a foundering in severe weather, with the precise mechanism of loss undetermined. The Andrea Gail was never found. She lies somewhere on the precipice of the continental shelf, in the dark waters of the North Atlantic. The tragedy might have been forgotten as just another fishing accident if not for Sebastian Junger's 1997 book, The Perfect Storm, and the subsequent film. These works highlighted the economics of fishing and the brutal reality of the men who do it. A memorial service was held at St. Anne's Church in Gloucester. The crowd spilled out onto the street, singing the Navy hymn, Eternal Father, Strong to Save. Today, the names, Frank W. Tyne Jr., Michael Moran, Dale Murphy, Alfred Pierre, Robert Shatford, and David Sullivan, are etched into the granite of the Gloucester Fishermen's Memorial. They remain forever young, frozen in the history of a town built on salt and sorrow.